For over 40 years, Jim Carrey made the world laugh while silently carrying the scars that Hollywood never saw. Behind the wild characters and rubber-face chaos was a man who remembered every slight, every insult, every moment respect was denied. At 63, he no longer conceals the truth. Jim Carrey is finally ready to name those actors who pushed him one step too far, reveal the betrayals he carried for decades, and recount the industry moments which changed him forever. Number 1. Tommy Lee Jones. In 1994, Jim Carrey was at the height of his comedic powers. Films like Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber had made him one of the most bankable stars of the decade. Stepping into Batman Forever felt like a natural next chapter. Sharing the screen with Tommy Lee Jones, a recent Oscar winner for The Fugitive, was supposed to be a milestone moment where the rising king of comedy met one of Hollywood's most respected dramatic giants. Still, from the very beginning, tension was unavoidable. Warner Brothers had pushed Jones into the project after replacing Billy D. Williams, and behind the scenes, Jones made it clear he saw the campy Two-Face role as beneath him. Crew members recalled him rolling his eyes at the script and complaining that the film felt like silly money for silly work, the complete opposite of the serious dramas he was used to carrying. Carrey tried to bridge the divide. He came onto set looking to impress, improvising jokes and experimenting with his scenes, bringing the same high-energy chaos that had defined his career. But Jones didn't see genius, he saw disrespect. The more Carrey committed to the Riddler's manic unpredictability, the more overshadowed Jones felt. His acting style was controlled, internal, and measured. Carrey's was explosive and impossible to ignore. The clash was inevitable. Everything came to a head the night before one of their biggest scenes together. Carrey spotted Jones eating dinner in a Burbank restaurant, walked over with a smile, and proffered a polite hello. Jones stood up shaking and told him, "I hate you. I really don't like you. I cannot sanction your buffoonery." The words landed like a punch. Carrey had never been spoken to like that by a co-star he had admired for years. Director Joel Schumacher would later say, "Jim was a gentleman." Tommy Lee was threatened by him. For Carrey, it was his first bitter lesson about Hollywood elitism, how comedy was treated as lesser, how prestige actors guarded their territory, and how admiration could turn to resentment overnight. Number 2. Jerry Lawler. By 1999, Carrey's career had moved from the slapstick chaos of Ace Ventura to transformative performance. When he took on the role of Andy Kaufman in Man on the Moon, he didn't act according to legend. At any rate, he simply vanished inside the character. Kaufman had blurred the line between comedy and provocation, between sincerity and deception, and Carrey decided to honor him by living exactly as Kaufman did, even when cameras weren't rolling. What began as method acting soon became something darker, and the person caught directly in the crossfire was Jerry the King Lawler. In reality, Kaufman and Lawler's on-air rivalry in the 1980s had been a highly choreographed piece of performance art, a closely guarded collaboration between two showmen who held each other in deep respect. But Carrey didn't grasp or perhaps didn't want to know about the gentleness underlying that rivalry. The moment Lawler arrived on set, Carrey, fully inhabiting Kaufman, began to regard him as an honest-to-goodness nemesis. He berated him with insults, ridiculed him when cameras weren't rolling, and wouldn't speak to him as Jim. At first, Lawler figured this was just harmless method acting. He'd built his career on dramatizing conflict for paying customers. Never before, though, had the animosity been unilateral and unrehearsed. One day, Carrey crossed a line even Kaufman never did. He spat directly in Lawler's face. The moment left jaws dropped on set. In reflex, Lawler clutched Carrey by the hair and locked him into a front-face hold-a move that, if not done right, can result in serious injury. Carrey's bodyguard came in, making it even more dangerous. Within minutes, Carrey was off to the hospital, returning in a neck brace and refusing to work with Lawler. The entire production questioned whether the injury was real or another deep dive into Kaufman's spirit. Later, Lawler would claim that Carrey had been trying to convince him to execute a pile driver for real in a dangerous stunt, and that when he refused, Carrey turned the hostility up a notch. In the 2017 documentary Jim and Andy, Carrey admitted he had lost himself completely. It wasn't performance anymore, it was obsession, which left a permanent, bitter mark between him and Lawler. Number 3. Will Smith. The night of March 27, 2022, was supposed to be one for celebrating Hollywood's greatest achievements. Instead, it became one of the most disturbing moments in modern award show history. Carrey wasn't in attendance when Will Smith strode onto the Oscar stage and slapped Chris Rock, but he didn't have to be. In a matter of seconds, the moment had reverberated around the world. What struck Carrey wasn't the violence itself, it was what happened afterward. Barely 40 minutes later, Smith returned to the same stage, tearful and emotional, defending his actions as love and protection, and the audience rose to its feet. They applauded a man who had just assaulted someone on live television. To Carrey, though, the standing ovation exposed something rotten at the center of Hollywood's identity. He called Gayle King the next morning to say, "I was sickened by the standing ovation. Hollywood is spineless en masse." It wasn't disappointment, it was hurt, betrayal, and disgust from a man who had spent decades getting the hypocrisy of it all. Carrey had publicly weathered mockery of his mental health, his relationships, and his career. He had sat through award shows where the host made jokes at his expense. He had never once responded with violence. To him, the slap wasn't some kind of hot-headed moment, it was a dangerous precedent, a sign that power now meant immunity. Carrey underscored that the issue was not about money. It was about accountability. "If it had been me, I'd have announced this morning that I was suing Will for $200 million because that video is going to be there forever," he said. He was talking about the permanence of humiliation, the idea that one person's emotional impulse could stain another's public life indefinitely. While Chris Rock declined to press charges, Carrey saw something deeper, a system protecting its favorites, allowing Smith to stay, giving him a platform, and celebrating him. The slap confirmed something he had long suspected. Hollywood's morality is flexible, loyalty is selective, and fame bends the rules. Carrey wanted no part of it anymore. Number 4. Shia LaBeouf. Some feuds arrive like explosions, others creep up quietly and strike with unexpected cruelty. Jim Carrey's conflict with Shia LaBeouf belonged to the second category, subtle at first, then suddenly vicious. It began in early 2014, during one of the most chaotic periods of LaBeouf's career. His short film, HowardCantor.com, had just been exposed as a near word-for-word copy of Daniel Clowes's 2007 comic Justin M. Damiano. The scandal spiraled instantly, with plagiarism accusations, angry artists, and headlines calling LaBeouf a fraud. And then came the apologies, each weirder than the last. His initial apology had been plagiarized from a Yahoo Answers post. Subsequent ones seemed to be lifted from public statements other celebrities made. At one point, he tweeted he was retiring from public life, only to return days later with a new performance art explanation about the death of authorship. Hollywood wasn't sure whether he was having a meltdown or putting on a show. Jim Carrey, though, saw comedy in the chaos. On the 2014 Golden Globes, he took the stage and opened with the familiar line, "Dying is easy, comedy is hard." Then he added a jab he thought belonged to LaBeouf. "So young, so wise." The room erupted, but LaBeouf didn't laugh. Instead, he responded in the most personal way possible. He posted a music video featuring Carrey's daughter, Jane, and followed it with a cutting caption, "At least I don't get arrested for indecency on major LA highways or abandoned loved children." It was a brutal, targeted attack and completely unfounded. What made the whole thing weirder was that his insults were plagiarized again, lifted almost word for word from Rupert Murdoch's 2012 rant about Hugh Grant. Within 30 minutes, LaBeouf panicked, deleted everything, and posted an apology acknowledging Carrey's involvement in his daughter's life. But by then, the damage was done. Later discoveries revealed that at the time of the tweets, LaBeouf's Twitter activity showed he had been following only one account, Jane Carrey's. Number 5. Mark Wahlberg. Unlike Carrey's explosive encounters with Tommy Lee Jones or chaotic hostility with LaBeouf, his rift with Mark Wahlberg grew from something quieter, an unspoken judgment delivered publicly and aimed at one of the most sensitive chapters of Carrey's life. Their tension didn't begin on a film set, nor did it start from a personal exchange. It began in 2016 when Wahlberg made some comments about celebrities speaking on politics and public health. A lot of people need to shut up and just act. Wahlberg didn't mention Carrey by name, but Hollywood didn't need a translator because everyone knew whom he meant. To understand why the comment cut so deep, you have to go back to 2005 when Carrey started dating Jenny McCarthy. Their 5-year relationship dropped him into the middle of one of the most contentious public health fights of the time. McCarthy thought vaccines caused her son Evan's autism, and together they became the most famous faces of the anti-vaccine movement, showing up to rallies, writing opinion pieces, and bashing the CDC in interviews. Carrey, who'd always used his fame for emotional storytelling rather than activism, was now tossed headfirst into a medical and political firestorm he was never prepared for. The backlash was as swift as it was merciless. Medical communities denounced him. Journalists jeered. By the time Carrey and McCarthy finally parted company in 2010, he was emotionally spent, publicly battered, and privately wrestling with depression. And then years later, when Mark Wahlberg dismissed all celebrity activism as empty arrogance, it felt like a verdict on Carrey's entire ordeal. Wahlberg, a man with a troubled past, a career built partly on calculated reinvention, was lecturing other actors on the perils of speaking out of turn. And the hypocrisy stung. Carrey had made mistakes, but he had made them out of love for a woman, for a child he helped raise, for a cause he believed in. To him, Wahlberg's criticism symbolized a Hollywood rule left unspoken. Speak boldly only when your opinions are safe. Challenge the system, question the narrative, touch a hot third rail, and you will be instructed to stay in your lane. Carrey saw it for what it was: cowardice masquerading as pragmatism. Number 6. Jenny McCarthy. The most intimate, most emotionally complicated, and painfully real name on Carrey's list was his connection with Jenny McCarthy. This feud didn't start over clashing egos or some professional disagreement. It started with love, real, vulnerable, consuming love. When Carrey and McCarthy began dating in late 2005, the world saw them as a bright, charming couple. What people didn't see was the emotional weight he was carrying and how that pressure mounted around them. McCarthy's son, Evan, who'd been diagnosed with autism at a young age, became the center of her life and soon the center of Carrey's, too. For years, McCarthy praised Carrey's kindness to her son, saying he helped Evan overcome challenges she couldn't handle alone. Carrey became more than a boyfriend. He was a father figure, a source of stability, and a part of a family that wasn't originally his. But behind the affection was another force taking shape. McCarthy was becoming one of the loudest voices in the anti-vaccine movement, and Carrey, out of loyalty and love, was pulled in with her. He stood beside her at rallies, wrote op-eds, and used his platform to amplify arguments he later regretted. The pressure was relentless. McCarthy scheduled family time around activism events, intertwined their personal lives with political messaging, and pushed Carrey to take public positions he wasn't always comfortable with. Meanwhile, he was struggling privately with depression, something he had battled for years. The emotional turmoil, the public backlash, and the growing strain inside their home finally cracked the relationship. When they broke up in April 2010, the world thought it was mutual. Both posted gentle, respectful statements. But 2 years later, McCarthy revealed on Howard Stern that Evan was in therapy because Carrey had cut off contact. It felt like abandonment to him. He responded through his publicist, saying he loved Evan deeply, but had to do what was best for everyone's well-being. It was heartbreaking, a reminder that love without legal protection can leave lasting emotional casualties. Years later, McCarthy softened, saying that she and Carrey had become friendly again and that Evan still watched his movies. But for Carrey, the wound remained the most personal, the most complex, and the one tied not to an enemy, but to someone he once believed would be in his life forever. 6 names, 6 stories, and a lifetime of lessons that Jim Carrey never forgot. Which of these clashes surprised you the most?